John Wertz here, Montgomery County Tea Party, and we're here tonight with Jamie Quinn, and she's running for Conroe ISD, position 8?
3.
3, I'm sorry.
Position 3.
So I got my positions backwards here. It's September 24th, 2018. With me is Larry Rogers, Della Fessenden, Dennis Tibbs, and Pat Tibbs. And Jamie, as we talked about, we'll go ahead and get started. You can tell us a little bit about yourself and why you're in for this position. And then we'll go into the Q&A until either we run out of questions or run out of time. And then you can go ahead and finish up with the same up to 5-minute closing. So I'll turn it over to you.
Okay, well, my name is Jamie Quinn, and I am owner and a real estate broker of Village Realty. I've been a real estate broker and real estate agent in Montgomery County for 20 years. Prior to that, I was an operations manager for Transamerica Commercial Finance, so I do have financial background also. And the reason I'm running is basically just concern for the Conroe ISD and it going in the right direction. My mother was a school teacher for 35 years, and I do have children and grandchildren that are former or future Conroe ISD students, and I want to make sure that the school district is headed in the right direction. I'm concerned that it may not be if citizens don't step up and do their parts.
Okay, great. Well, thanks for coming in. On the general questions, and the second one, what do you view as the top 3 issues facing Conroe Independent over the next 5 years? You said taxes are too high. Are you referring to tax rates or the tax bills in general?
Well, the tax rate for Conroe ISD basically is what I was referring to. I think that if they got the administrative costs down, they could lower that.
Mm-hmm. How much do you think they could lower that? I mean, have you looked at the budget and have you made a determination on how much they
I have not made a determination on exactly how much, and I think it would be a process. It's not going to be, oh gee, let's just lower this immediately. I think it's going to be a process over the years of getting expenses down and getting the tax rate down as a result of that.
So you said, I guess the second part of that question, administration expenses are far higher than they should be. You know, about how much too high they are, and where we should be on ratios of teacher to administration and support personnel.
I don't have exact numbers on that.
Okay. And then the third part of that question, you said the school district should get back to teaching basics and the curriculum. Most people say reading, writing, math, but you added history in that too. Okay, can you share with us why?
Well, I think that U.S. history is an important, one of the important curriculum items that needs to be part of the school.
Yeah, okay.
Taking that a little farther, would that mean that you think that our past history, whether it's Alamo or Confederate or any of those, should be left in history books or taken out?
I think they should be left in history books.
Okay. Give me a little overview of what you know about Common Core.
I don't know a whole lot about Common Core other than when my grandkids bring it to me, I have to watch videos to help them with it. I think it was, I mean, for me personally, it was easier before. You just took a paper and added 2 and 2 and came up with 4. And now you need, you know, you need a calculator and instructional video to figure it out. So
one of our questions was, is the board currently fulfilling its obligations? You said no. You kind of touched on it in the opening, but if you would be a little more specific, if you could.
Well, I think that, like I said, I think administrative costs are too high. I think, the current board may just be voting the way that administrative in the, budget committee comes in and says, this is what we want, and they just say, okay, and vote that direction. And I think you should be considering more what they're saying and not necessarily go along with it.
2 or 3 years ago, we were told that if my memory is correct, that administrators in the schools are to teacher ratio is like 4 to 5 to 1. My memory is correct. Explain that and what you think about that.
Well, I don't know that I can explain how they came up with that initially, but I think that the administrative ratio is high. I think that there should be more dollars spent in the teachers, and if the teachers need assistants, teachers' aides, or whatever in the classroom, that's where the money should be. I don't think you should need that many administrators.
Thank you.
Okay, following up on some of the other earlier questions, the Common Core has been a big thing in Texas a few years ago. It was called C-Scope. But basically, Common Core is the federal version of the Texas state C-Scope. You've got all sorts of Every Child Succeeds Act and No Child Left Behind and everything coming down from the federal, all those things coming down from the state. Getting back to the basics is something I identify with, but I had no clue how to get there from where we are. So how do you see how we get there?
Well, I think that the school curriculum should be determined by the local people, not the state. And I think that's how you get there. I think the teachers' input and the local board and the taxpayers and the parents should be determining what the curriculum is. And like I said, it may not happen immediately, but I don't think the state should be determining what we want our children to learn.
So how would you accomplish that?
I think it would take time, but I think, again, you change the curriculum on a local basis.
Okay. Have you heard of the UN program called International Baccalaureate?
No, I have not.
Okay. Okay, Dennis?
You know, we have so many government entities around here, most of them taxed, and almost all of them are constantly wanting bond money. Do you know anything about the school board's bond history, how many bonds are outstanding, and what sort of record they have in paying them back?
I do not have that
Or they got a
information.
new one coming up, I think we've heard of something.
I've heard that they're talking about presenting a new one. I don't know that I would support that. The information is not available yet as to what they're looking at. I think that,
Who makes a decision to go ahead with a bond? Is that the school board?
yes.
So you think it's a numeric vote if half of them say no, or?
Well, I mean, the taxpayers vote on it.
Well, before it's passed, yeah.
But yeah,
put it on the ballot.
I think the superintendent and the school board present that as to whether it goes on the
Is
ballot.
superintendent on the board?
He's not on the board, but he is there.
Does he have a vote?
That
on decisions?
I don't know that.
Okay.
So, you said the school district should get back to teaching the basics in its curriculum, reading, writing, math, history. Don't they do that now? And if not, what are they doing? I mean, over and above what the basics are, because that's pretty much what their charter is to do.
Right. Well, I can tell you that, they spend a lot of time on extracurricular activities and just not really teaching, but doing things that aren't part of the educational.
Okay. What about testing? What do you feel about the testing that a lot of these students are going through? Do you not think that their curriculums aren't geared towards the testing that would educate them? Is that enough? Or is there more to it than that maybe the students are not getting right now?
I think in my experience, the teachers may be focusing on the children passing the test rather than actually learning what they need to learn. That's my personal experience.
Okay, in other words, they're not really developing critical thinking skills,
Correct.
they're just doing memorization.
They're saying this is what you need to know. They're under a lot of pressure to pass those tests. And so they're just making sure the kids know what they need to know to pass the test rather than being able to actually have the knowledge.
Do you know what some of those tests are that they take?
Well, I know they take the STAR test. I don't know the name of the
Okay, familiar with TEKS? TEKS test?
I'm familiar with it. I don't know what all it is.
Okay. All right, Larry?
Who are your opponents in this race?
Skeeter Hubert.
What?
Skeeter Hubert.
Skeeter, okay. The financial experience was Operation Manager for Transamerica.
Mhm.
So, explain that a little bit, what all you're responsible for.
Well, as the operations manager, I was responsible for reviewing credit files, and they were multi-million-dollar credit files, reviewing financial statements for mostly computer businesses. I had account managers under me. I would go out to businesses and audit their books.
So that gives you a good basis for being able to look at the budget,
Correct.
understand it. Okay. You indicated, we had a question, what party are you associated with? When you were born, you told us that. Have you, and I noticed you served as a precinct chair in 2012?
Whatever year I put on there, I don't believe exactly what year that was.
2014.
Correct.
Was that Republican?
Yes,
Yes,
it was
it says
Republican
yeah.
precinct chair.
That was for 2 years,
No, it was just for the one election.
just for one election. Did you not want to run again?
Because I was, my son was having grandchildren, I needed to focus
okay.
on some family things at
Okay.
that time, so, I did not do it again.
Are you active in the Republican Party now?
I vote in the Republican,
Okay.
but I'm not part of the Tea Party. I do, help with some campaigns. I help with the NOAC campaigns.
All right, David?
Okay, why did you choose, there are 3 positions up for election, CISD, position 1, 2, and 3. Why did you choose to run for position 3?
Well, there was nobody else running against Skeeter, and I felt that there needed to be somebody running against him.
Because?
Because of some of the ways that he's voted, or not showed up for votes.
Okay, okay. How regularly do you attend the ISD school board meetings?
I have actually only been to one of them.
Okay.
Is
Okay.
that the one where the electricity went off?
Yes, that was one electricity bill. That was a budget meeting.
Okay. Question on the questionnaire, do you believe a lack of funding from the state is the primary reason for lower educational outcome? You said no. So what do you believe the primary reason for lower educational outcomes is?
Lack of support for the teachers.
Okay, and how would
Focus.
you encourage that support to improve?
Well, I think that there's probably too many students in a classroom. They, like I said, I think that they might need teachers' aides in there, or they may need more teachers in order to have smaller classrooms. I just feel like there's just not enough. I think the money should be in the classrooms. The teachers should be the main focus for support.
Okay.
Do you know what the ratio is of students to teachers in CISD?
No, I don't.
Okay. I'll wait for next time for my next question.
What is WCR?
Women's Council of Realtors of Montgomery County Chapter.
And you are basically self-employed, so you don't have a problem being
Correct.
available for school board meetings and things? Okay. Well, let me ask you about safety. You know, that's become a really big issue recently. As far as I know, CISD doesn't have armed teachers or staffers. So,
They currently do not. They do have their own police.
yeah.
Conroe ISD does have a
Do they
fairly
have-
large
yeah.
police.
They have one for every campus?
I believe they
Yeah.
do have at least one for every campus.
So if they were to decide they wanted to arm staffers or something, do you vote for that or against it?
I would vote for that provided that there was training for those. You know, I wouldn't vote for somebody without any training whatsoever to walk around. But I think that with proper training, I would support that, yes.
Okay. Okay.
And I think that it has to be somebody who wants to be armed.
Sure.
You can't just tell somebody they have to be armed. Not everybody's emotionally equipped to do that.
Yeah, that's right. Okay.
Alrighty. So, okay, you said you haven't looked at the budget.
I have looked at the budget.
Oh, you have? Okay, you said too much money is spent on administration. How much, do you know how much that is, and what should it be?
I don't have the figures with me.
Okay. And you said also too much money spent on building brick and mortar as opposed to classroom investment. I guess maybe some schools wear out, but maybe you can explain that a little bit more on what you mean by that.
I think, well, schools do wear out, and some schools, not really in the Woodlands as much, but some of the schools in Conroe are extremely old. But I just think that there's, and there is a need in some neighborhoods for, you know, the Grand Oaks High School was definitely in need. But I think that they're just focusing too much on the buildings and putting money into that.
Okay. Let's see. What we got? Go ahead.
One of the questions was, what are your thoughts on Governor Abbott's plan to increase teacher pay by $100,000? And you said too high for government employees. Along that line, how much do you feel would be proper, and how would you determine if one teacher gets more than another?
Well, first of all, I don't think that the state should be determining what we pay Conroe ISD teachers. I think that should be a local decision. I think $100,000 is high. Currently, I think it's like between, I don't have the exact number, but I think it's $50,000 around there for starting teachers, goes up to 65 for, that's like the top. I don't think there's enough difference between starting and the top teacher pay. I think in order to keep qualified teachers in the system, you have to pay higher than that.
What would you think, the starting out
just-
teacher?
Well, I think the starting salary is probably a good starting salary. I think it might be low on what they cap out at.
What do you think would be reasonable?
Probably closer to the 70s. I mean, they are public servants, they get some benefits for doing that, but
Okay. Dale, you got 40 seconds.
No, you don't.
I just gave you.
I got 40 extra seconds.
No, you don't.
Oh, okay.
Going on over for you.
In answer to the question, what's the proper balance of local and state funding, you said local 100%. And yet if you have local 100%, currently the balance is roughly 50-50. That means that you would have to double the school portion of local property taxes in order to fund it.
no, you would have to reduce expenses in order to,
By 50%.
I don't have the exact number, but like I said, it would be a process.
Yes.
It would be a process.
Even if it's a long, the end point is 100% local, and you're not going to increase property taxes, the math is pretty simple.
Right, you have to reduce expenses in order to accomplish that. I do not think, I don't think that the state should be determining local
Okay.
school curriculum. That should be something we do locally.
Well, you have a major challenge convincing the Texas State Legislature and the federal bureaucracy of
Correct, I understand.
accomplishing that. Explain to me what your understanding is of the Robin Hood provisions in school funding.
My understanding of the Robin Hood provisions is that they take money from the school districts that are wealthier and they give them to schools that don't have as much money tax-wise.
And what would happen to that if you have 100% local funding?
I don't think that the local schools should be funding other schools.
Okay, so if a school district in far west Texas with a small number of students and low property values can only afford to put up a wooden building that's unair conditioned and a one-room school, that's fine.
Well, they may have to go to the state. I don't think that Conroe ISD should be funding that.
Okay, I understand, but those are, Robin Hood is a statewide plan.
Correct.
Okay, Dennis?
Well, on transparency, what information is available online from CISD? Is the bank register available? Are student records available? What's available now? What ought to be available?
Well, on the Conroe ISD website, the budget's available. I have not seen them. I don't think bank records are available. You go to the Texas education website to get the ratios, how you compare with other school districts.
Well, how do you see how much money CISD is spending? You have to ask for public information? Or is it somewhere, or should it be somewhere online where you can find it?
How much they're spending per month, I'm not sure if that's online or not.
Well, yeah, who they have contracts with and how close they're
Yeah.
coming to their budget and that sort of thing. And how about student record? What kind of information should be available? Or do other districts make available? You probably would show what the grades are.
No, I don't think you show their grades, you show their, you show how they're doing. I mean, you can't show personal grades, you can show an average of how they're doing.
You show how the individual schools compare to.
Right,
Other ones in the district and other ones in the state maybe, but we don't have that now, do we?
You do have their ratings, so you can go online at CSD and see what
The ABCD rating now,
what the different school ratings are.
and they express it as an A or a B or a C, or
I think
is it the percentage?
it's more, it's a exemplary or,
Oh, okay. Okay.
So, in the debt category, in our questionnaire, we had asked what the current bond indebtedness was, and then there's the talk of the new bond, which you addressed. Do you know what the current bond indebtedness is for
I
CISD?
do not have that information.
Okay. Larry?
What is your opinion of the, let's say that I'm a county commissioner and I have a need to transport some of my band equipment and my band to another facility. And I contact my buddy over at CISD, and he says, hey, I've got a truck, you can borrow it. So I go over and get it, and move my band equipment. What's your feeling about that?
I don't, well, if it's a CISD truck and CISD expenses, I don't think that should be used by the commissioner.
Or if I wanted,
Correct.
if my buddy was ahead of me.
No, I don't think that CISD equipment should be used for, I think it should be pretty easy to get somebody to volunteer a truck who personally has one.
Dale, I'm gonna really give you a bunch of time this time.
Okay, Governor Abbott has proposed a number of things to improve school safety in Texas. One of his propositions has been dubbed red flag. Are you familiar with that, and what are your thoughts on that?
I'm not familiar with it.
Okay, well, red flag is kind of evaluating, if you will, and these are my words, at-risk students, ones who could potentially be problems, or not so much students, but people, potential gun owners, who might have, you know, I could say, well, you know, I've got my questions about Dennis. I don't think he's ready to own a gun. And so powers that be might make a determination whether they think Dennis ought to be able to own a gun or not,
I don't agree with that.
even if he's never committed a crime.
Correct. I would not agree with that. No.
Okay, well, that was one of Governor Abbott's considerations. And let me see, I had another question over here. In answer to the question, what can school districts do to ensure more of existing education funds are spent on educational purposes rather than administration and overhead? You said reduce the administrative bureaucracy. Could you provide us a little bit more detail on that? How would you go about that? Where would the cuts come from?
Well, the cuts would probably come from staff and from, I think there's too much administrative staff, that's number one. Just
What departments would you cut?
well, I would need to review that more,
Okay.
because I have the budget, but I don't have the breakdown.
Okay. And Dennis, you have my permission to have a gun, and your question is yours.
Thank you.
That's a good thing.
Do you know what the Marshall plans and the Guardian plans are? They have plans that would question,
No.
maybe we ought to put numbers on each question. Anyway, I don't know what they are, I just wondered if you did. Okay. Doctor, answer that.
He's not running for office.
Okay, so I think it was mentioned here a little while ago, what is the appropriate staffing ratio of non-teachers to teachers? You said 1 to 4 or lower. Are you aware of any school with a ratio higher, that high of, say, a 4-to-1 ratio of teacher to administrator? And right now, it's about 1-to-1 throughout the state. What do you think would be reasonable?
Well, I think 1 to 4 would be reasonable, but
Okay.
I think it's going to take some time to get.
So a lot of the administrators and support staff now, they have like nurses and a heck of a lot more counselors and, that sort of thing. Is that, where do you envision cutting to get to that low ratio of 4 teachers to 1 administrative staff? If you know of any areas where you would cut to get there?
I would need to actually look at that more closely to see which schools.
Okay. Larry?
Say you were born in Texas, how long have you resided in Montgomery County?
I've been in Montgomery County for, since 1989. Almost 30 years.
And your education, did you want to?
I went to technical school, so I had, went to 2-year technical school to be a respiratory therapy technician. And, of course, then I went to technical school to get my real estate broker's license.
Okay.
I did not get a college training.
Are you affiliated with a particular brand in your real estate business?
I own my own company, so we are not a franchise.
Okay.
I did work for Keller Williams and Caldwell Banker, but I've had my own company for 7.5 years now.
So is that residential or commercial?
We do both.
Do you-
My son and I own the company, and we do both.
Okay, Dave.
Okay. Conroe ISD is clearly the largest ISD in Montgomery County, growing at a rate of 1,500 students a year, we keep hearing. When does it get so big that it's time to consider dividing it? What is the rationale for making a decision of that nature?
I don't know that there's any consideration for dividing it.
Should there be?
Probably not at this point.
So if it grew to, God forbid, 6 million students, that would not be too big.
I don't have any information showing that it would need to be divided.
Okay. Dennis?
Okay, when the district decides to spend tens of billions of dollars building natatoriums and football stadiums and little domes, theaters and things like that, how's that decision made? Who makes that decision? And for some of those things, what would you go along with and what would you oppose?
Well, I would oppose anything that, I don't think that the school district should be paying for public things that are being used by the public. If they're gonna pay for things, they should be used by the school district.
Well, I think the natatorium and things like the stadium across the street, those are used by school kids, right? To play football games and stuff.
Right.
And even, in the Rio Grande Valley, there's one of them has a full-size water park, and I guess students use that.
I think that's probably for public use, but,
It's a school district park,
yeah.
And almost all of them, some of the recent bonds that you see are made primarily for the purpose of building stadiums.
Yeah, I don't know why they would need a water park. I mean, they do
How about these $60 to $80 million stadiums that we build?
Yeah, that's excessive, I think.
And you would vote against anything other than just a plain Jane stadium?
Yes, I think I would.
No.
So, with our taxes amount to almost half of our property tax bills, would you, apparently the tax rate has stayed stagnant over the last 4 to 5 years. Would you, I guess, with the appraisals going up, pretty much across the board still, even though we have a fairly stagnant economy, would you vote to lower the tax rates if you were elected for the school district so that it's a little bit more in equilibrium for the taxpayer? In other words, if the tax rate stayed the same over the last 4 years, but the appraisal's been going up, we've been paying out of pocket more each year.
That's true.
So it seems to me that maybe it's time for a little relief to the
And there's
taxpayer.
additional houses being built that brings money to the taxpayer.
So would you
also.
vote to lower the tax
Yes, I
rate then?
would.
Okay. Larry?
I know there was just a new big high school built over in Bender's Landing over that
That's
area.
Grand Oaks, yes.
What, do you have any feel for, are we at capacity, or are we under capacity, or are we over, I mean?
Well, Oak Ridge was definitely over capacity. And there was a need for a high school in the Rayford Quarter area. There was nothing there.
Do
So
you know how much over capacity we were?
I don't know exactly.
Do you know of any other that are over capacity?
Currently, as far as high schools, I don't know that any of
Or
them are
even
over capacity.
elementary
I think,
schools?
I think probably not. I think where the growth has been, they've been adding schools.
So what does it take, typically, they have a lot of temporary buildings out there for different schools that tend to absorb some of that capacity. At what point is a new school required? In other words, you have X amount of capacity at school. Once it gets over that, how much over that would it require a new school to be built?
I don't know what ratios they're actually using, but I know the growth in the Bender's Landing, Imperial Oaks, Spring Trails, Harmony, that growth definitely was overtaxing the Oak Ridge School.
Oh, because of the capacity?
Right.
Okay,
Because, of the number of houses being built in that area.
right. Yep.
Okay, the term conservative has really gotten bandied about. To the point where a lot of people don't even know or they have their own personal definition of conservative. So what would you consider the hallmarks of a true conservative to be?
Hallmarks of a true conservative. I would think, you mean as far as the school board or
In general.
just in general? I think a true conservative would be someone who is concerned about the financial and fiscal, maintaining low taxes. In most cases, a conservative is going to be pro-life.
Okay. Any other hallmarks? And you've already told us that you're for low taxes and pro-life, so then obviously you would proudly adopt the label conservative. I guess, is that correct?
I haven't really labeled myself. Other people have labeled me, but I have not really labeled myself.
Okay.
Okay. You know, we mentioned earlier, there's all these dozens and dozens of taxing entities that make up their own tax rates and decide what exemptions to give. And there are all kinds of exemptions, old age exemptions, disabled veteran exemptions, and others. Some of these are required, some of these are optional. Do you know what exemptions are required for school districts to give?
Well, they do give exemption, they do give a homestead exemption, a percentage.
Is it required by the state?
I don't know if that's required by the state, but I know that they are doing that.
And how about disability and old age and those sorts of things, veterans?
I don't know what the rules are on that.
Okay. That's all I got.
You know, I kind of missed, well, okay, let's just go to this one. Maybe we'll come back to the other one, because I know you already answered it. What could school districts do to ensure more of existing education funds are spent on educational purposes rather than admin and overhead? You said reduce administrative bureaucracy, and we touched on that a little bit. Do you know if we're locked into some type of civil service commitment to those, to the administrative bureaucracy?
I don't know what contracts we are currently.
But there are contracts,
There are contracts, I don't know what.
but not necessarily civil service. Okay. Larry?
On contracts, obviously, there's a lot of money being spent on things, trucks, maintenance, and everything. The outside entities that are supplying some sort of service, what is your feeling on how they let those contracts? Should they accept one bid, two bids, or three bids, or look at one, two, or three, or how would you?
I would think you would need at least three. Since it would be.
You were a Republican precinct chair, so obviously you have been Republican. I presume you voted in the last
Yes.
several elections for several years.
Yes.
Okay, great. That's all I got.
Okay, Jamie, of the existing ISD board members, which one do you most picture being your, most like you? And if you're on the board, what one would you look to become your mentor and bring you up to speed? And
Probably Bush, but she's leaving, or hopefully she's leaving to go be treasurer, but I think that she would still be willing to mentor and provide advice, even though she would no longer be on the board.
okay, why do you identify most closely with her?
Just, I think her concern for the school district, her concern for keeping taxes low, and just conversations that I've had with her on school safety, different things. I just identify most with her.
Okay. Dennis?
I think I'm gonna pass. I'm all out.
There seemed to be a little hoopla over some of the reappraisal of homes after Hurricane Harvey. Are you aware of that
Yes, I'm
situation?
aware.
What happened then?
Yes.
What kind of is your, give me a little cook's tour of that, or what your understanding of that is, and how you might have handled that differently.
Well, my understanding was that, of course, there were homes in the Conroe ISD school district that were damaged during Harvey. They needed to be reappraised as damaged homes so that the taxpayers weren't paying full taxes on a home that had lost value or was not livable. And there was there was some people on the board who did not feel that they should be reappraised.
Was your opponent one of them?
He did not show up for the vote. It's my understanding that he did not think that they should be reassessed. But, so he was not there for the actual vote.
So it was addressed in 2 meetings, right? And
The vote was delayed, and so they did vote for it.
and he was gone on the second
Correct.
meeting when they did the vote. Okay. All right. Okay.
Thank you.
Do you have a question?
Yeah, we're done.
Okay, my turn again.
Last question.
I've got 2 more, John. I'm gonna have a question after the wrap-up. Okay. You've obviously got an active real estate business.
Correct.
And a number of other interests and so forth. How much time do you think it's going to take for you to do a diligent job on the school board?
Well, I do have a real estate business, but I do have a partner who is supporting me and will be willing to take up any slack that's needed.
Will it take 40 hours a week?
I don't think it will take 40 hours a week. It could at sometimes take 10 to 20 hours a week.
Are you prepared to give 10 to 20 hours a
I
week?
am.
You got that much availability in your
I
schedule?
have that much availability
Okay.
in that schedule.
Okay, do I get another one, Joe?
You
Go
still
ahead.
have a minute and 28 seconds.
Okay. Give me what you can see the biggest contrast between you and your opponent in this race.
I think the biggest contrast is that I am concerned about taxpayers. I want to keep the tax rates low. I'm going to, I mean, they do provide crib notes, if you would call them that, before meetings. I'm going to do my research and I'm going to get advice. I am a Republican. I don't know that he is. And I think that I'm going to show up for meetings. I'm not going to not be there when there's a very important vote.
Okay, good enough.
And how many board meetings had you attended before?
I actually had only attended one board meeting.
Okay. Okay, all right, Dennis? Yeah, okay, why don't we go ahead and close now, if you'd like,
Okay.
you're up to 5 minutes closing, and then we'll wrap it up.
Just basically, I'm not a politician. I'm just a concerned citizen who wants to do my part. For the school district, I do believe that in order to keep property values high, education and quality education is very important, and in order to maintain a good future for our citizens, that the education is very important, and I'm interested in making sure that that happens.
All right, great, thank you very much, thanks for coming in.
Thank you.
Appreciate your time.
Thanks for running.
Thank you.